It is. Great. We are, well, that's because we are Midwestern, Bob. We have our Midwestern sense of duty that my friend always told me that we about. Good to have you back. See, if you get here in person, you get those little extra behind-the-scene things. If you're streaming online, you're just out on that. But great to be back on Wednesday night. This is our last Wednesday night Bible study until the new year, until January the 14th, actually, because we've got Christmas Eve next week and New Year's Eve the week after that, and then Taizé worship the week after that, and then we have Bible study. So we'll be joining up again January 14th. Hope to get Jesus off the road by this evening to Jerusalem. We'll see how we do, because we've got some great stories to look at tonight. Great parts of Luke. A lot of unique Lucan material tonight. Specifically, the first one is probably the most famous, most beloved, and it is only Lucan story that we have. It's the prodigal son story. So, in Luke chapter 15, we have three parables, two that are unique to Luke, that have been stitched together, but all in the context of this party that Jesus is hosting, it seems. All the tax collectors and sinners were gathering around Jesus to listen to him. The Pharisees and legal experts were grumbling, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." The word for welcome here does have the sense of host. So I'm not exactly sure how Jesus is hosting, because we haven't seen to this point that he has that capability. But it is what the Pharisees and the legal experts are accusing him of, is hosting, welcoming these tax collectors and sinners. So Jesus decides to deal with this grumbling by telling them this parable. Who the antecedent of them is, since we have lots of possibilities in that first paragraph, is a good question. I think it becomes pretty clear that it's the Pharisees and the legal experts who are them in the story, but we'll keep going. Jesus says, "Suppose someone among you had 100 sheep and lost one of them. Wouldn't he leave the other 99 in the pasture and search for the lost one until he finds it? And when he finds it, he's thrilled and places it on his shoulders. When he arrives home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Celebrate with me, because I found my lost sheep.' In the same way, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who changes both heart and life than over 99 righteous people who have no need to change their hearts and lives." This is the first place that lostness is equated to sinnerness in Scripture, which I find an interesting point, just to point that out, that Luke has some unique stuff that he talks about, and this is one of them. I said there are three stories, and this first one sets up the pattern. Storytelling having threes in it, this is not a new thing. Storytelling always has threes in it, right? It's always three guys that walk into a bar. It's always a hokey and a cavalier. And who's the third one in those jokes in Virginia? I'm just curious. Because in Indiana, it's easy. We got Indiana, Purdue, and Notre Dame. I just don't know how the jokes that we've got in Virginia for those three. But it's always the three, right? And it's the third one that's always the punchline. The first two set up the pattern. The last one delivers the punchline. Well, this one's setting up the pattern. We have 99. We have 100 sheep. 99 are fine. One of them is lost. And we find that lost sheep, and there's a party that happens. This sets up the pattern. So this is one that's told elsewhere. However, we get a unique picture. What woman, if she owns 10 silver coins and loses one of them, won't light a lamp and sweep the house, searching her home carefully until she finds it? So it's gotten more serious. We lost 1 out of 99 in the first story. We lost 1 out of 10 in the second story. So the loss is more significant. This is probably a home with no windows at all, so this is why she has to light the lamp to try to find what's going on. When she finds it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Celebrate with me, because I found my lost coin." In the same way, I tell you, joy breaks out in the presence of God's angels over one sinner who changes both heart and life. Another unique aspect of this story, one of the few parables that you see where God is portrayed as the woman in the story. That, we have the shepherd in the first one. That's not an unusual thing. But this parable in which the woman is serving as the representation of God, that's an unusual thing and a nice one. But the second story sets up the pattern of the first, right? We lost something, we find it, we celebrate afterwards. Well, now the next one, we go from 1 of 99, or 1 of 100, 1 out of 10, we get 1 out of 2. Jesus said, "A certain man had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, Father, give me my share of the inheritance. So this is, Dad, I wish you were dead, right? I want your money. It was not unheard of to give children their inheritance while the father was still living, to distribute that. However, you were not allowed to spend it until after the parent was dead. That was, it's in Sirach chapter 33, actually. I looked that up today. Sirach is an intertestamental book. It's in the Catholic canon. It's kind of like a really big Proverbs. It's got about 48 chapters, and they are just proverb after proverb. It's a wisdom book. And in it, it talks about the responsibility you have to not cash in, even if you have been entrusted with your parents' wealth, to not cash it in until they have passed. But this younger son is not real bright. The father would have every right not to do this, by the way. The father, in most cultures, would not do this. I read a Chinese commentator that said this would not happen. It's just a Chinese father would slap the son for dishonoring him in such a way. But that is not what happens here. The father divided his estate between them. So this means now the younger son has half this responsibility, legal responsibility of the estate, and the older son has the remaining part, right? So soon afterward, the younger son gathered everything together and took a trip to a land far away, and there he wasted his wealth through extravagant living. So he's completely violated all social norm in this, violated all convention, squandered his father's wealth, he has acted in a shameful and dishonorable way in a honor-shame society here to do this. So this is pretty bad. It gets worse for him, but this is just his actions alone. The question was insulting, and his actions are insulting in doing this. I get all wound up. How are we doing? Questions? I've been talking for 7 minutes without even break, but I get excited. I love this parable. This whole chapter is my favorite in Luke, I think. And I love a lot of stuff in Luke, but I love this one a lot. We're good? Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Well, do you think that they're prevented from spending the money because they might need it
Yes.
to take care of the
Correct. Yes,
So it's a gross injustice
Correct.
to the parents and disrespect.
Yes.
To say, well, I don't care what happens to you.
Right.
Even if you fall ill and
Not only has he asked him, I wish you were dead, he then treats him as though he is. Yeah, he takes the money and spends it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's without question. Because, yeah, that's the point, that you would take care of. In fact, Sirach says you don't want to trust your wealth to non-family because they won't take care of you. Turns out sometimes family doesn't take care of you in this. When he'd used up his resources, a severe food shortage arose in that country, and he began to be in need. He hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. A lot of bad jobs if you're a Jewish kid, but I gotta believe slopping hogs is gotta be near the top of worst jobs ever. I think it's possible that he is in a non-Jewish country, is the implication here, right? If they're raising pigs, if there are swine herds, then he's probably not even around his own people. There was one interpreter that suggested this is a classic, it was the Chinese biblical scholar who said this would be a classic Asian approach to get rid of someone you don't want around anymore. You give them a job they don't want to do. That would be embarrassing to them. So you ask the Jewish guy to slop hogs so he leaves the country because you're tired of having him around because he doesn't want to do that. It would be inappropriate for him to do that. I think it's more likely he's in a Gentile area and he is so desperate he is willing to hire himself out to do this. He longed to eat his fill from what the pigs ate, which I'm just going to go ahead and guess isn't kosher. If the pigs are already not kosher, I don't think we're feeding the pigs a kosher diet. So it's bad for this guy. No one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have more than enough food? But I'm starving to death. I will get up, go to my father, and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Take me on as one of your hired hands.' So he got up and went to his father." I love his practice speech, right? I need a plan. If I'm going to do this, I've got to get through this. What's my plan? So I've got a plan, right? I'm going to go hire myself out. And then we get the part of the story that is just so beautiful. I love this story. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was moved with compassion. His father ran to him, hugged him, and kissed him. So a sign of welcome and forgiveness. I mean, this is not condemnation. This is community. Then his son said, who has to be taken aback, his son said, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against..." He wrote that speech. He ought to try and get through it, right? I mean, he worked hard on that speech, and this was the plan. "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son." But the father said to his servant, so he interrupts him. He can't even finish his speech. "Quickly bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet." All of these things signal full reinstatement. All of these things say you are not a servant. Servants wouldn't necessarily have sandals. You've got a ring, so you have a position of authority. You can speak for the family once again in this. This is all a sense of honor, welcome, restoration, forgiveness completely. And we must celebrate with feasting, because this son of mine was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate. So it's the same story, right? We've got something that was lost and was found, and then a party develops. Except there's more to the story. And we find out exactly... Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
The fact that the father saw the son,
Yes.
and was still a long way off,
Right.
implies that he was always
He was looking.
always waiting to welcome
Yeah.
him back in.
Yeah, yeah. And even though this son has shown him such dishonor, from the very beginning of the story, showed him dishonor, the father is willing to take on shame to bring him back. The public shame of restoration, absolutely. But more than that, the running. Running is not something adult Middle Eastern men did or even do, frankly. It was one of the things when American troops went to Jordan and were working with the military in Jordan, they're having a hard time with some of the trainings because the men didn't like to run. It was children run, men don't run. The book of Sirach, same book, says that you can tell something by the way people walk. And running is not, it's undignified, right? And so the father doesn't care about that. The father takes on public shame to go to his son and restore this relationship.
And one more thing, you said he interrupted his son.
He did.
Because in the rehearsal of the speech, it
Right.
goes beyond,
Make me one of your hired servants.
and he doesn't even get
He doesn't get a chance to say that. No.
So that's probably why it's spelled out.
Right.
So that we realize that the father interrupted the
Correct. One interpretation suggested the hug was to prevent him from kneeling. The hug was to maintain equality and not let him subjugate himself. Yeah, to just be restored. Yeah, Anna.
What do you think the father would even let him go or give him the money to waste? And what do you think of the father's decision to let him go?
It's pretty irresponsible, isn't it? I mean, he could have. Yeah, he could have told him no, right? It was a shameful thing that he even asked. And yet, the father gives him the money. The father lets him go. And then when he comes back, the father welcomes him and restores him. This robe and ring and sandals, there's no trial period here. There's no, probation. There's no, let's see if this is a real conversion. There's no, this is an act of complete grace. This is a definition of grace. Undeserved reception by God, by the Father here. Right? It's beautiful. Just a beautiful picture of this. Taking on shame to restore the relationship. Gosh, this seems familiar. Feels like we're going to get to this not long if we think about crucifixion. Anyway. Okay, so everything's great. Happy ending, right? Well, no. His older son was in the field. Coming in from the field, he approached the house and heard music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what's going on, because this is going to be a neighborhood party that this is. This is going to be a huge community celebration. The servant replied, "Your brother has arrived and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he received his son back safe and sound." The older son was furious, didn't want to enter in, but his father came out and begged him. So now the older son has shown shame against his father because he hasn't joined the party. And now the host has to leave the party. Hosts don't do that. A host doesn't leave the party until the party is over. And so again, the father takes on personal shame to restore this relationship that we have going on here. And his father came out and begged him. And he answered his father, look, I have served you all these years. I've never disobeyed your instruction, yet you've never given me as much as a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours returned, after gobbling up your estate with prostitutes, notice he didn't say my brother, right? You got that, right? This son of yours returned. Gobbling up your estate on prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him, which we probably should take some time to ask who the fattened calf belonged to at this point. Because at the beginning of the story, he divided up the estate between them. So it was the older son's fattened calf. I mean, he couldn't do anything about it until he died, but still, there's less now. His father said, son, you were always with me and everything I have is yours. Right? We did this already. We did it at the beginning. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. So you knew where the barn was. I don't know what your problem is. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture of the Father coming to restore this, and also a challenging picture of the Father's grace in this, because the older son makes some very good points. I mean, really, he does. I mean, he has a problem with God's grace. And it's the reason that he is in this story is because the people at the beginning of the story have a problem with God's grace. They have a problem with Jesus accepting the tax collectors and the sinners. They have a problem with Jesus just welcoming them with hospitality at the beginning of the story. So, I mean, this is the punchline. This is the punchline of the joke, right? You celebrate a lost sheep, you celebrate a lost coin, you sit in judgment over a lost soul.
Say that again.
You celebrate, okay.
Say that again.
This is the punchline. There are 3 stories in this chapter. There's the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. And in the first 2 stories, you celebrate after a lost sheep, you celebrate after finding a lost coin, you sit in judgment over finding a lost soul. Yeah. So there's a reason the story is so beloved. Right? It's just beautiful. And we wouldn't have it if it weren't for Luke. Luke is it's the only place the story occurs, is in the Gospel of Luke. Questions, comments, thoughts? I know it's 20 minutes on the prodigal son, but still, it's just a great story.
But it is, well, not amazing.
It is amazing.
Unfortunately, that is, so many families break up on the very basis
Sure.
of that very,
Yeah.
that refusal.
Well, I was saying I was reading a Chinese interpreter earlier, and she said, in my family, I understand this. This is the older sibling. The responsibilities always seem to fall on the older sibling. They're always the one that has to do this. They're always the one that has to do that. And now here comes the younger one getting away with whatever they want to get away with. I mean, yeah. She said, I get it. By the way, very much the same story as the book of Jonah, just in case you were curious, where the city of Nineveh receives grace by God, and Jonah is upset. They don't get what they deserve. Yeah. I mean, I think probation would have been okay with the older brother, right? I do. I think, okay, dad can welcome him back, but he's going to have to show that he means it after the dishonor he has shown and brought on this family, that he's had to live with, right? He stayed there. Same family. Same community. Look what your brother did to your dad. Look what your brother did to you. Look what, you got half as much as you used to because your dad was dumb and made that sharing thing. And so it's the same story. Yeah, God's grace is always upsetting. So.
But if the son never returned, he never would have received that grace.
That's right.
He didn't repent.
He did. But he didn't have to go out. He just had to show the desire. God, the Father, ran to meet him.
Right, but
Yeah.
he did.
He did.
I don't want to say it was deserved. I'm not discounting it at all. This is absolutely
Yeah.
grace. But the younger son's role in it is he made the decision to come back.
He did. He came to his senses.
So he put himself in a position to receive that grace.
He did. Probably in a very disoriented mind. Yes. Look, receiving grace is one of the hardest things we do as human beings. I mean, it really is.
Repenting is hard.
Well, repenting is hard too, but then forgiveness for the repenting is hard. We'd really like to do things, right? We'd like, if we could do some penance, if we could do something that feels like we've played a role in this, it'd make us feel a whole lot better, because this kind of welcome and freedom and I can't even kneel to ask for forgiveness here. I've been reinstated fully. That's a hard, I mean, I don't know. That's something to process here. Yeah. Really.
What's the number one example from your, I don't have the answer, that's the question.
Okay.
So what's the number one example in the Bible where God offers his grace and then keeps giving it?
Well, you can pick any story where God offers.
Well,
Well, I mean, you could start at creation.
this all ends good.
Yeah, well, not exactly. We don't know what the older son does. Yeah.
So is there an example where it kind of
The number one example of God offering grace and being betrayed?
yeah,
You know,
or is it accepted, right? You just keep going.
Howie,
doing the same
I have a hard time picking that because the story I see in the text is God continuing to show grace and people continuing to take advantage of it and betray God on this. I mean, as you go from Genesis to 2 Kings, just as the primary narrative of the biblical text in the Old Testament, that's what you see. I had a student once, I'll never forget, Kimberly was her name, and she said, why does God keep doing this? Is God a slow learner? We have done nothing to show that we are going to do anything different, and God keeps loving us, and God keeps forgiving us. She really had a moment there that God just keeps showing grace, and people keep taking advantage of it and betraying it. Yeah, so it's tough. We really like to believe we deserve it. That's really the thing. We'd like to believe we've merited it. We're a little better, and that's something else God deals with here. So, yeah, this is just such a great story. I love the cliffhanger too. Same as Jonah. We don't know how Jonah responded when God said, look, if you can't be happy I saved the people. There's a lot of cows there. I didn't kill the cows. Could you at least be happy the cows aren't dead? We don't know how Jonah responds to that challenge, and we don't know how the older son responds in this. It's just an open question, I love that. The Bible loves cliffhangers. Loves cliffhangers. Yeah.
Well, it didn't seem that the son either expected that from his father.
Mm-mm.
His return wasn't with an expectation
Right,
that this would happen.
right. He probably thought of, boy, if he ever did come back, I'd tell you what I'd do. Yeah. Good story. Anyway, I could talk a lot about that. Let's move on to Luke 16. This is a great story because no one knows what to do with it. Well, that's not true. Evangelicals have a harder time with this story than a lot of people do. This is another Lucan story, the story of the unjust steward. This one's tough because we are not used to Jesus telling stories with flawed characters, right? We're used to Bible stories where this is a good character who does good things, or a bad character who does bad things, or a bad character who learns to repent and then does a good thing. We aren't used to Breaking Bad as a parable. We're just not used to a flawed story, a flawed hero being used by Jesus to make a point. And that's what we have here. There's no redemptive quality to the unjust steward. Okay, that's what Jesus calls him in the very beginning. So just prepare yourself for this being a tough one to read, because it's a tough one to read. Jesus also said to his disciples, a certain rich man heard that his household manager was wasting his estate. He called the manager in and said to him, "What is this I hear about you? Give me a report of your administration, because you can no longer serve as my manager. You're fired." So the household manager said to himself, "What will I do now that my master's firing me as his manager? I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm too proud to beg. I know what I'll do so that when I am removed from my management position, people will welcome me into their house." One by one, the manager sent for each person who owed his master money. He said to the first, "How much do you owe my master?" He said, 900 gallons of olive oil. The manager said, "Take your contract, sit down quickly, write 450 gallons. Then the manager said to another, "How much do you owe?" He said, 1,000 bushels of wheat. He said, "Take your contract and write 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he acted cleverly. People who belong to this world are more clever in dealing with their peers than are people who belong to the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to make friends for yourselves, so when it's gone, you'll be welcome into the eternal homes." What's the matter, Nancy? The interpretation just didn't suggest itself to you? I don't preach on this one much. It does come up in the lectionary, and I have preached on it before, but it's It's not a popular text to preach from. Now, what are we going to do with this? Well, a couple of things. The wicked steward is either foregoing his own personal commission to earn favor with the manager that's firing him. In other words, that half that olive oil or however much of that wheat was going to be his commission and he's given that up. I don't think that's the case. I think what is more likely the case, he is using the lack of public knowledge of his firing to maneuver the manager into being unable to fire him or collect his debts with the other people, and or set himself up for a job with the people that he offered the good deal to. Because remember, this is an honor-shame society. He has now represented this boss and said, you only owe 450 gallons of olive oil. There is no way that his boss can come back to that man and say, actually, my steward misread that. You owe me an extra 450. He can't do that without being publicly shamed. He can't go and collect these debts now that they have been forgiven by his representative, right? And if he gets fired by the manager, as it looks like he's going to, these people whose debts he has forgiven are looking to hire him because, they're going to be favorably disposed to this guy that gave them a good deal. He is setting himself up really well. He's playing all the angles on this. Either his manager is going to feel like he needs to keep him because publicly it would look bad, or these people he has helped will give him a job because they have now owed him a favor. Pretty clever in this. What's the spiritual point of this? That's the question. Well, one real quick thing. In this passage, worldly wealth or unjust wealth, is that what it's called? Yeah, well, let me get back to, Jesus gives us the interpretation, and then we'll unpack it a little more. Whoever is faithful with little is also faithful with much. The one who is dishonest with little is also dishonest with much. If you haven't been faithful with worldly wealth, that is money that we've got, who will trust you with true riches? now? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, like I said, he's a flawed hero, and we're not used to Jesus telling stories with flawed heroes. We're used to the father, we're used to the younger son, the older son, archetypes in this. This is a guy who just shows cleverness, and Jesus saying, look, these people, he's using this to make friends for himself here and a life for himself here. You need to use wealth to make friends for yourself in eternity. You're making frowny face at me, Bob.
I can't reconcile what you're saying.
Okay.
It does not make sense to me.
Okay. The parable?
None of it.
None of it makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Ben. Now you're making frowny face at me. Getting a lot of frowny faces at these people.
I've always seen it.
Okay.
He cashed out of an economy that was failing
Right. Yes.
in order to gain, right?
His own position.
In order
Yeah.
to translate that money into a currency
Right.
in another economy that he was moving into.
Right.
Right. And that's what
And Jesus is saying you should take worldly wealth and secure eternity, basically.
worldly wealth you can't buy
Right. Right.
eternal security.
No.
But
But
what you do with wealth here has
correct.
tremendous implications
Correct.
in the next economy that
Yes.
you're moving.
Yes. Which is a challenge for the people that are listening to this who still believe that wealth is an indication of God's favor and lack of is an indication of God's judgment. That is what everybody is thinking, which is why when Jesus tells this parable, this is the response. The Pharisees, who were money lovers, heard all this and sneered at Jesus. Like, well, this is just crazy. I mean, this is the dumbest thing you've ever heard in your life. Can't love God and money. Money's a sign God loves you, of course. Everyone knows that. So they sneer at Jesus. So Jesus said to them, you're the ones who justify yourselves before other people, but God knows your hearts. So the sense in which it's not about the money that you have. I mean, remember the prophets? I've talked about this before. Amos and Hosea. Oh, look how God has blessed us. No, you've had your thumb on the scale. That's how you got rich. You have cheated people. You have not used this position to make friends for God, if you will. You have not used this position to lift up those who need help. So it's not, money is not, the value judgment here of using that as an indication of God's love, it's not going to work, Jesus is saying. It's a tough story, though. Everybody wrestles with the unjust steward. We're not, especially evangelicals. We're just not used to these, Jesus using flawed characters to tell a story. I'm not a fan of Breaking Bad personally. My son loves it, but yeah, go ahead. Yes, wealth can be used for, yes, but it's not, and that is what God is interested in, right? Are you using where you are to bring glory and honor to God, to people God loves, if you will? Let's put it that way. But it's not an indication that you can't necessarily be proud of yourself because you've achieved wealth, or believe that it's an indication of God's blessing, or because it is what you're doing with it that God is interested in. It's what your heart is saying that God is interested in. And we'll see a little. This is a theme. I mean, Luke says more about money than the other Gospels, and we're gonna see this just very shortly about how Jesus unpacks this. Go ahead, Ben.
Conversely, he's not saying what, say, for example, the Catholics would say, which is eschew wealth, or take a vow of just avoid wealth altogether.
Except he did say that in Luke 14.
As something that's evil.
Right. Well, I mean, Luke 14 is where he did say, give up. If you can't give it up, you can't be my disciple. But then he goes on to say, talking about using it. Like I said,
Use it.
right. And here he's saying use it.
Use it.
Last week he was saying get rid of it.
Use it and be willing to get rid of it
Yeah.
with a purpose.
Yes, here. Here, right, is what he's saying. Last week in Luke 14, which is still just a hard passage, he did say eschew it. Bob, now you've gone from frowny face to shaking your head at me.
Serve God in wealth.
That's what he said.
Where are we seeing that in the story?
Oh,
The person choose
it's not.
over God or God over wealth?
No. That's not what's illustrated in the story. what is illustrated in the story is this person using their position to secure a position for himself, using wealth. In the story, using this position, that the fact that no one knows it's public yet, to help him have a job later. That's that part, right? And he's saying that person who's an unjust and unrighteous steward understands the use of money, how you can use this better than God's people do, because he is using this to secure his position, and you people are lovers of money. You're not using it for true riches.
He's excusing someone else's.
He is.
What is he sacrificing?
Well, I think Jesus' point would be that's what your wealth is too, a gift of someone else. God has provided you this.
We're in the same position.
Right.
Because we're all dying.
Right. We're on our way out.
Exits
Right.
from this economy.
Right.
Maybe it's 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years.
Right.
We are all in the same exact position as that steward.
We've been entrusted with these gifts,
On our way out.
and so you should be using these gifts to secure true riches, eternal life, the way this steward is. Does that any better?
A little bit.
Okay.
You can't serve God and money.
Right.
But money can serve God.
Well, that's a pithy way we can do it. Yeah. 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 That's a pithy way we can do it. So, you okay, Nancy? You're not okay. Nancy has gone away from frowning and head shaking. She's now just giggling. That's the pithy. It's a pithy way to say it. So, Bob's right.
I think 10 and 13, those verses 10 to 13, I mean, they just look like a drop. They don't even apply to the story. It seems to me the story jumps from verse 9 to verse 15.
Now,
And then those proverbs in there.
yes.
Be honest in small things, be honest in big things. They're just a serious problem.
I think that it's an indication we've missed the point of the story if we don't see the connection. Yeah. It's easy to miss the point of the story. Now you're back to frowning again, Bob. I thought we were making progress, man.
You don't have to.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to get rid of that frown. Okay. All right. I'm not going to get rid of that frown tonight. I see that. Okay. Well, let's keep talking about money, because that's going to be. There was a certain man who was clothed himself in purple and fine linen, who feasted luxuriously every day. At his gate lay a certain poor man named Lazarus, who was covered with sores. Lazarus longed to eat the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. Instead, dogs would come and lick his sores. The King James provides an old preacher joke here, that Lazarus's dog's name, you can guess what was Lazarus's dog's name? His dog's name was Moreover, because in the King James it says, moreover, the dog licked Lazarus's wounds. So I didn't say it was a good preacher joke. It was just a preacher joke. Lazarus is about as outside as you get, right? Poor man. Dogs are unclean. Contact with him is going to make him unclean. He's as unclean a guy. He's poor, clearly has been forsaken by God. The frowns on all of your faces are the best thing ever. It's like the dog's licking his sores, and I've just got a whole group of just... Anyway, yes. He's as outside as you get. We got as inside as you can get. So what happens? Well, they both die. The poor man died and was carried by angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. While being tormented in the place of the dead, he looked up and saw Abraham at a distance with Lazarus at his side. Talk about your surprise ending. Nobody listening to this parable would believe that the poor man gets to Abraham's side. I mean, there's no... How? I mean, that makes no sense. Clearly, the rich man was favored by God, or he wouldn't have been rich. No, he ends up being tormented. Lazarus is the one who is in Abraham's side. He shouted, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I'm suffering in this flame." But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received good things, whereas Lazarus received terrible things. Now Lazarus is being comforted, and you are in great pain. Moreover, a great crevice has been fixed between us and you. Those who wish to cross over from here to you cannot. Neither can anyone cross from there to us." The rich man said, "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my father's house. I have 5 brothers. He needs to warn them so so they don't come to this place of agony. Abraham replied, they have Moses and the prophets. They must listen to them. The rich man said, no, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they'll change their hearts and lives. Abraham said, if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, then neither will they be persuaded if someone rises from the dead. Ooh, we saw that coming, huh? They didn't. But yes, some foundations that are being laid here for what's coming later. So, I'll talk more about that in a second. The insider is outside, the outsider is inside, right? One more example, that wealth isn't the indicator you think it is in Luke. Remember I said that for most of this book to this point, it looks like, in some ways, Luke is doing what Mark and Matthew did to an extreme degree. Everything is flipped upside down. The powerful are brought low. The rich are going away with nothing. The poor are being lifted up. The downtrodden. It looks as though he's just flipping it over all the way through this, okay? But hang on. He really surprises us here in a little bit. Let me stop there. Anything we want to talk about Lazarus and the rich man? It's the same kind of inversion.
I agree that even if God sent Lazarus, they wouldn't listen.
They wouldn't listen. That's right. People look for reasons not to listen. Remember, Jesus said that. He said, John came and he didn't eat or drink, and you said he was crazy. And I come and I eat and drink, and you say I'm a glutton. I'm starting to think y'all just don't want to listen. Yeah. That's my translation of it, but that's what he said. Jesus told this parable to certain people who'd convinced themselves they were righteous and who looked on everyone else with disgust. That's a nice inclusive group there that we've got. People who thought they were righteous and looked on other people with disgust. Two people went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed about himself with these words, God, I thank you that I'm not like everyone else, crooks, evildoers, adulterers, even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of everything I receive. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He wouldn't even lift his eyes toward heaven. Rather, he struck his chest and said, God, show mercy to me, a sinner. I tell you, this person, that is the tax collector, went down to his home justified rather than the Pharisee. All who lift themselves up will be brought low, and all those who make themselves low will be lifted up. So this Pharisee doesn't really do anything wrong. I mean, he's an extra super righteous guy. Right? He tithes, he fasts, he's praying, he gives thanks for where he is. He doesn't give God the credit for being where he is, but at least, he offers some thanksgiving here. The tax collector, God show mercy on me, a sinner. He acknowledges that he is nothing without God. That's really the difference between the two prayers, right? This righteous Pharisee, this righteous person, never acknowledges that it is God that has brought him where he is. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I see a very strong parallel with the prodigal son story.
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
The righteous man, the older brother,
Right?
tax collector,
The son, the younger son.
regretful.
Mm-hmm.
Because this Pharisee in this story, he doesn't get it. He thinks he's good.
He thinks he's
because of
right.
what he does.
Right.
And he's probably missing the intent while he's following the letter anyway. The older brother,
Careful, you're going to start to sound like you think you're better than him. And we don't want to do that.
the older brother worked so hard
He did.
to try to please his father,
Yes.
earn his inheritance, that he was out in the field for hours before
Faithfully.
he knew his little brother was home.
That's correct.
The party was in full swing before he realized anything was going on.
Yeah. And he wasn't mad he missed the party. He was mad there was a party. Yeah. Yeah.
Love is not proud or boastful. Love
Right.
takes no account of suffer wrong.
Yeah.
This Pharisee, is he a Pharisee?
He is.
This Pharisee is he doesn't have a clue. He's blind, spiritually, he's blind as a bat.
Proud as he could be. Well, this is meant for people who'd convinced themselves they were righteous and looked on everyone else with disgust. That's our target audience for this parable. So,
He just doesn't have a hope.
yeah. 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 That's right.
The other guy has a very
What's that? I'm sorry? Yeah?
Last sentence. So all who lift themselves up will be low.
Yeah. And those who make themselves low will be lifted up.
What does that mean, all those who make themselves low?
If you're boastful or you're humble, that's the difference here. Are you being boastful or are you being humble? Yeah. No, boastful is high. Boastful is making yourself. It's pride. Right. So the humble people will be lifted up, but the proud people will be brought low. Will be humbled. That's the Magnificat. We've seen that all month actually. Yeah. He wastes a lot of money. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're not wrong. No, you're not wrong. But and I would say it would go even further than that, Anna, because we tend to, and part of this I think is being Americans, we tend to individualize sin. And we forget all of our sin is communal. And as you're pointing that out, that the harm the younger brother did to his father, to his brother, to the community, to the harm the tax collector does, right, to the people around, absolutely. And that I think all human sin harms the community, no matter what we do. It diminishes us and it diminishes the community. And so you're right on the cusp of really understanding the controversial nature of the grace of God. I mean, it really is an act of forgiveness that is undeserved, unmerited. Harm is done, and yet they're found with grace. Yeah. Yeah, again, grace, it's a thing we struggle with more than anything. I really do. Yeah. And we're going to keep going even further. People were bringing babies to Jesus so he'd bless them. When the disciples saw this, they scolded them. Then Jesus called to them and said, "Allow the children to come to me. Don't forbid them, because God's kingdom belongs to people like these children. I assure you that whoever doesn't welcome God's kingdom like a child will never enter it." We tend to have some precious moments ideas about kids. I realize that, right? The sweet, innocent, wholesome, all that. First century notion of children and a child in this is total dependence, little better than a slave. This is someone who has very few legal rights, and usually those rights are only in relationship to their father or their family. And so what Jesus is talking about here is welcoming the kingdom as one who has no advocate, as one who has no power, as one who has no status, as one who is brought low, as one who is humble, as one who is small. That is welcoming God's kingdom like a child. So I just think that's important to remember the cultural understandings of this. This is not precious moments. These people have no rights, which is why they're trying to get rid of them. We're trying to dismiss them because of that. So the message is God's not who you think, right? If you think God delights in the spiritually superior, God's not who you think. If you think God delights or shuns the despicable sinner with nowhere to turn, God is not who you think. If you think God favors the rich and God is hard on the poor, God is not who you think. This is a surprising and frankly upsetting God to the people who were there. And it gets even better. A certain ruler asked Jesus, "Good teacher, what must I do to obtain eternal life?" The last time Jesus was asked this question was at the beginning of the road journey. We're at the end of the road journey now, right? And at the beginning of the road journey, when the guy asked, "What do I do to guarantee that I'm in that kingdom group to make sure that I'm there?" Do you remember what Jesus said? He said,
He looked at him, he loved him.
well, he said, "What do you think?" That's what he said. Remember, he asked him the question. "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, yeah, love God with everything you are and love your neighbor yourself." Jesus goes, "Yeah, that's it. That's the answer right there." And then he said, "Who's my neighbor?" And that's when we got the Good Samaritan story. This time, Jesus says, "Why do you call me good? There's no one is good except the one God." So it's a question. This is not a Jesus saying, "I'm not good." This is a Jesus saying, "Are you thinking that do you actually acknowledge that I'm God? Is that what you're confessing here? You know the commandments. Don't commit adultery, don't murder, don't steal, don't give false testimony, honor your father and mother." Well, that's 5 of them. That's not all of the commandments. I seem to recall, 613 total and 10 big ones. But we only get 5 here. Any significant commandments missing to your eye in this list of 5? They are. I always love it when Bob says, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to answer the question I want to answer. No, you're right. These are behavior. There we go. Yeah. The 4 big start ones he missed. You remember those? Have no other gods. Don't make idols. Don't misuse my name. Remember the Sabbath day. All the commandments, that relate to who God is. These are all the ones that relate to people. But none of the ones that relate to God are listed. So the ruler said, I've kept all these since I was a boy. This is phrased in this is my habit. This is my perpetual habit. You could translate this, I regularly do this and have done so since I was a child. Jesus says. When Jesus heard this, he said, there's one more thing. Sell everything you own and distribute the money to the poor. Then you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me. So, well, at this point, the man understood why those commandments about God were missing, because when he heard these words, the man became sad because he was extremely rich. He discovered the God in his life. He discovered the mammon that Jesus was talking about. This was too important. So, man, what happens? Jesus saw this. He said, it's very hard for the wealthy to enter God's kingdom. Man, those poor wealthy folks. Well, he said this at the beginning, right? Woe to the rich. You feel sorry for them. They just have a hard time. The poor get it, but the rich, boy, it's easier for a camel to squeeze through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter God's kingdom. No, I'm not going to talk about a gate in Jerusalem. I'm going to talk about an eye of a needle, and I'm going to talk about a camel. This is an actual bona fide miracle here, okay? This is not going to make it hard. No, impossible. Those who heard this said, then who can be saved? Jesus said, what's impossible for humans is possible for God. Well, not wanting to be left out, Peter wanted to make sure and get credit for what they had done. And Peter said, we've left everything that we own to follow you. And Jesus said to them, I assure you that anyone who's left house, husband, wife, brother, sisters, parents, or children because of God's kingdom will receive many times more in this age and eternal life in the coming age. Luke is interesting because he doesn't talk about wealth here. You get 100-fold in Mark and 100-fold in Matthew, but here you'll just get many times more community than you had. If you left community, the naturally understood community, you'll get even more community. Now, I did the rich young ruler. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I have to get to the next story because it's an important next chapter. Remember when I said how my former colleague Mike McKeever said Luke is really good at putting opposites together, like the Samaritans reject him at the beginning of this, and the next chapter you get the Good Samaritan story. Well, we just got this man who's a rich ruler who had his wealth and couldn't get rid of it. And then Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through town. A man there named Zacchaeus, a ruler among tax collectors, was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he couldn't because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree so he could see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to the spot, he looked up and said, Zacchaeus, come down. I must stay at your home today. So Zacchaeus came down at once, happy to welcome Jesus, eager to be a host, remember hospitality. This is a guy who could not wait to welcome Jesus into his house. Everyone who saw this grumbled, saying, he's gone to be the guest of a sinner. Oh my goodness, it's Jesus, man. He's always doing this. Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, look, Lord, I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anyone, I repay them 4 times as much. This is exactly the same phrasing as the rich young ruler in the previous chapter, the same verb form. I have habitually. It is my practice. It is what I do. This is a continuous, this is not I saw Jesus and got my life together. This is a righteous rich man, which is in Luke, no one saw this coming, right? He has been flipping things on its head since the beginning, and the rich have gone away empty. But here Zacchaeus says, I give half my possessions to the poor. If I've cheated anyone, I repay them 4 times as much. 4 times as much is the heaviest fine you pay in the Old Testament. It's the one you pay if you are consciously trying to cheat someone and you get caught. For someone who makes a mistake, you just, I overbilled you, my bad. There's a penalty. It's like a fifth of what the whole total amount was if it was accidental. He says, if I've cheated anybody, I treat it as though it was my fault and it was malicious. And I make sure that I make that restitution in a generous fashion. I don't do what the law requires. I go above and beyond to generously make sure relationships are. This is a tax collector who understands that wealth has no meaning apart from what you are doing to help other people with it. Which is when Luke comes along and just blows your mind in this book. Because up to now, you would not expect this story. You would expect Zacchaeus to give everything away and follow him, like the rich young ruler. Didn't. No, it's better than that. He just makes this his practice. This is just what he does. This is his lifestyle. He's generous with wealth because that's what I do. And Jesus says, today salvation, or Jesus' name, salvation, redemption, has come to this household because he too is a son of Abraham. I came here because he is a son of Abraham. This tax collector is a son of Abraham. The human one came to seek and to save the lost. So, beautiful story of a righteous, rich person in Luke, which nobody saw coming. That is just, it's a huge twist. That's a great question. I mean, that's why I say the story is just, it's like Jesus has been building some sort of scaffolding about wealthy and poor, and then he pulls it away, and then he does this new different thing all of a sudden with Zacchaeus, who apparently doesn't need to give it away because he understands what wealth is, and that is just something you help people with. I guess. I mean, it's a great story, right? Because we read Luke 14:33 last week, and then we just saw Zacchaeus, and Jesus offers no sell everything you have and give to the poor. No, the rich guy had to give everything away, but Zacchaeus, he gets it. Wealth doesn't mean anything to him. Yeah, that he converted. Yeah. Translation. I mean, it's a translation issue. I mean, it really is. I mean, the King James gives the sense that it was that day, as opposed to having that same. It's exactly the same verbal construction as the rich young ruler. All this I've done since I was my youth, right? I always do this. This is what I always do. And you know, if you don't convey that, yeah. And I think people like that story. I think I don't want to, but they like the story of the Zacchaeus getting it and having a moment, a come to Jesus moment. But it's not what the Bible says, no, which is, I mean, he was looking to see Jesus and couldn't wait to welcome him home, right? He couldn't wait for him to come into his house. That's not somebody who didn't get it. He got it. Yeah, he got it habitually, he understood. A righteous tax collector made no sense to these people. I mean, it makes very little sense to us, but it made no sense to these people. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's probably right. Yeah, although the verse says today salvation has come. Yeah, as opposed to today Zacchaeus got it. I don't know that it's Zacchaeus got it. I think it's, today Jesus showed up. You okay there, Meg? Now you're making frowny face. Oh, you're going to sneeze. Right, well, I'm coming to your house today. Yeah, we got to do the today, right, of course. Absolutely. So, all right, well, thank you all for coming. I love these stories. I wish I had easy interpretations for them. That's probably why I love them so much, is because they're so hard to read. But we will, after this, Jesus has made it to Jerusalem. So the next story after this, shortly, it's a little bit further than this, but not much, is the triumphal entry, the entry into Jerusalem. I would say the palms, but there's no palms in Luke. And as I recall, there's no hosannas either. So I don't know what to call it in Luke. So we'll just call it the triumphal entry in Luke. So we'll be getting to that in 3 weeks, which will be 2026, which is crazy to think about. So 4 weeks, I'm sorry. 4 weeks, because Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Taizé, and after that we will meet. So, yes. So have a great Christmas and New Year's and Taizé. So